Hi, everybody. Today we're talking about chapter 14, 15, 17, and 18. On chapter 14, we talked about guidelines for rehearsal. I'm really big on making sure students have clear guidelines as to what rehearsal is going to mean and what we're going to be doing during those rehearsals. I really liked how he talked about the characteristics of leadership that we have to have as directors. I've worked with a few people in the past who have not had like clear-cut direction. Maybe part of it is because they can't see their vision and be able to put that out there for the students to understand. But I really liked what Catrone said about having these characteristics as a director. One thing I really loved was the need for warm-ups. I remember a time when I was working with somebody who didn't even do warm-ups because he felt it was a waste of time that the students were already warmed up. But when I started doing musicals, that was not the case at all. These kids needed to warm their voices up, they needed to warm their physical bodies up, and I realized that that made a huge difference as to the transition from school day into the rehearsal part, into what we were doing. And it really kind of refocused them and gave them much more purpose at the end of the day of what we were accomplishing in rehearsal. So I really liked warm-ups. Next, in chapter 15, he talked about developing the character. The one thing I really love was the character analysis that he gave us. I thought that was such an invaluable gift. He gave us this whole list of things that we can ask students or we can tell our point of view too of what we think as directors, but then ask them questions. I love that list. I actually made a form and printed it out for my prompt book and added a different list for my characters for this show that we're currently doing. So I really appreciated like specific questions to be able to ask those students about their characters. I mean, I just think it's so great. I guess the biggest takeaway at the end of the chapter there was that I think directing individuals, everybody is different, and that we have to, as directors, each person's going to give us what they think is happening in the scene and with the character, and we're going to have to kind of help them and direct them. I know young children especially, we have to ask a lot of questions. Then chapter 17 and 18 was about blocking. The first one was about the principles of blocking. My favorite thing he said was that, we're creating the visual pictures of the stories like working with a kinetic sculpture. I love that whole concept. I always tell children, we're trying to create the story from a piece of paper and to bring it to life. And we have to do that through creating pictures. And we're creating live pictures for the audience so that they can feel connected to what's happening in the story as well as the characters. One thing I want to talk about is he talked about the difference between a typical movement and an atypical movement. I thought this was interesting. I hadn't really looked at it that way before, that a typical movement will amplify the character, but an atypical movement will bring the vision or will reveal the emotional changes. And I never really thought about that before, that, you have to do certain aspects. It could be something even small that brings out the emotion. I never thought about that, and I like that concept that he talks about. The techniques. I guess going into techniques for chapter 18, one big thing for me was I love levels. I'm a big level person. I try to, even though in middle school here, we still try to use that UIL set or whatever set we have so we can add levels. I'm so excited about this Jungle Book that we're doing. I'm actually building this rotating cave and council that is about 8 feet high. The kids are like so excited. It's sort of going to kind of be a jungle gym, but we're making it secure to the ground so that it will rotate pretty easily. But to add those levels so that those animals can be at different levels throughout the play is going to be a really cool thing. So I love the dynamics of that, and creating that stage picture is so important. Finally, I think the last thing he said that I really connected with was that we have to preserve our right to experiment. So like what looks good on paper may not look good on the stage. And I can't tell you how many times I've scrapped things. I'm like, oh, that looks awful. We have got to redo that. And the kids are really flexible. And if they know that, they'll go with you and they'll be like, okay, let's try it this way. And I think asking kids to participate in that is really powerful because it gives them leadership skills as well. So a lot came out of this week, so I appreciate it. All right, y'all, have a good one. Bye.